This boy is a complete loser, without friends, who just spends all day in his cave playing his favorite game. He prides himself on being one of the best players to ever exist on the server. Currently, he's playing against his friend, whom he met online. After sweating a lot, he wins the game. His friend says goodbye, and he feels sad realizing no one can beat him in 1v1s. Out of boredom, he starts stalking his crush, but he gets called for another match with someone he doesn't know. It's a girl from a higher rank who figures out his strategy and defeats him. In a moving car somewhere else, the redhead who beat him, named Nono, comments to two others that the protagonist plays well but has nothing special. The guy, Sheng, who's driving, wonders what the director wants with him. Next to him, Aki knows the director never insists with anyone. They talk about an interview, and Nono reconnects mentally with the mysterious girl from the cyber world. They discuss the protagonist, named Lu Mingfei, who is 18 years old, studies at a private school, and is quite antisocial in real life, unlike in the game. They know everything about his life, even about his crush. We discover that the protagonist didn't pass the entrance exams, spends his days playing, lives with his uncle's family, gets pushed around by his relatives, and doesn't have any big ambitions. The protagonist receives a cell phone and a letter from Cassell Academy, which he believes is a college. This is the interview the three were talking about in the car. He tells his family he got accepted, but they don't believe him and mock him, saying only geniuses like Tuzian go to good colleges with full scholarships. They're interrupted by a helicopter that destroys the kitchen wall, and security guards appear. Tuzian himself puts a cape on the protagonist, kneels, and calls him boss. But this was just Lu Mingfei's, protagonist's, imagination. The next day, he goes for his interview in a fancy hotel and is dazzled by all the luxury. There are 5 other people also waiting for the interview, one of them being his crush, with whom he tries to start a conversation. But soon she enters for the interview and quickly exits, leaving it as the protagonist's turn. As soon as he enters, the interviewers are in a strange world with yellow eyes. He gets startled and nearly falls but is caught by one of them. They introduce themselves formally and turn out to be the two from the car, Aki and Sheng. Aki starts with a confusing question, asking if the protagonist believes in extraterrestrials. The previous night he had studied a lot, and nothing was about that, so he decides to answer in English, saying yes, he believes. Sheng tells him to speak in Japanese, normally. Still thinking this is an ordinary interview, he explains his reasoning, talking about how the universe is beautiful, vast, and grand. But Sheng reduces it to the fact that Mingfei feels alone in the world. The second question is if he believes in superpowers, to which he replies that he does, otherwise anime would be a lie, and life would be sad and miserable. But again, that was just his imagination, so he answers that he believes with no special reason. The third question is a philosophical one about matter and spirit. The protagonist goes into a trance of imagination, daydreaming during the interview, and thinks they're making fun of him. So he decides to give up, thanks them, and leaves, trying to catch up with Wenwen, his crush. Professor Guderian passes by with Nono, rushing, asking how the interview went, but they inform him that the protagonist gave up. The professor panics and tries to reach the protagonist. In town, he and Wenwen are hanging out, and they plan a movie outing, making him very happy. As soon as he gets home, his uncles tell him he passed the interview and that they're going to have lunch with the director. Professor Guderian is very interested in Mingfei, ignoring the rest of his family. He promises to pay a good sum for the protagonist's education, making his money-hungry aunt very happy. The professor sees great potential in him, which the family doesn't believe. The director explains that his parents graduated with honors from the same school, handing over a letter saying Mingfei's parents love him very much, leaving everyone shocked and commenting that his parents haven't seen him in a long time. The protagonist, feeling sad, goes to the bathroom and reads the letter from his mother to the director, asking that he be accepted into the college. While he cries, Nono appears, telling him he's in the ladies' room. They return to the table, and Mingfei says he will think about the opportunity, but Nono realizes it's because of his crush. Alone, the protagonist remembers a story Wenwen told him and agrees with Nono, speaking out loud. Nono overhears and tells him to be honest and talk to Wenwen. The protagonist gets shy, and she mentions that Professor Guderian asked her to convince Mingfei to join the school. They talk, and Nono tells him Wenwen doesn't like him. She gives a speech to make the protagonist realize he needs to be more determined. In the office, Guderian is worried. Sheng and Aki enter, saying that Professor Lars needs them back, but Guderian says they need the protagonist to return. In a dark alley, Nono reconnects with the mysterious woman and asks for data about Wenwen. We see the protagonist and Wenwen on a sort of date, strolling through the city. They run into Nono, who asks the protagonist to decide if he's going to accept, but he doesn't want to, so he can stay with Wenwen. At home, we see him practicing his speech to ask the girl out, and his cousin runs to tell his mom, thinking he'll ruin everything. The protagonist rehearses the entire plan for his big love confession, but a guy from his class proposes first, and Wenwen accepts his request, making the protagonist feel terrible. But Nono rescues him, arriving glamorously, calling him Ricardo as if they were lovers, and taking him away, since she can't leave until he accepts joining Cassell Academy. We then see the conversation Nono had with the mysterious woman, discovering that Wenwen liked this other guy and that she would probably accept the love confession. In the car, they run out of gas, and Nono finally convinces the protagonist to accept. We discover that the mysterious woman, who seems more like an AI, is called Norma and authorizes the protagonist's access. On a road, a blonde guy named Caesar gets the information, and while playing basketball, Tuzian is also informed. Norma announces that Lu Mingfei has finally returned. The protagonist is sent to a subway station, without money and a card to catch a train on the CC line station, which he knows doesn't exist. People think he's a beggar, but he meets another Cassell Academy student named Finger, who explains to him how the subway system works. They wait, and the protagonist falls asleep, dreaming again about that war-torn past, only to wake up to the sound of bells and a giant moon. A boy speaks to him and summons flames, which makes him wake up for real. The protagonist and Finger are called to the train, which was late because Finger is now rank F and no one cares, but the worker is startled because Mingfei is rank S, like the director, and someone should have picked him up earlier. The protagonist uses the card, and the entire station is dedicated to him, with a special express train. Professor Guderian appears to give him further instructions, explaining that the college lasts 5 years and that, in fact, Cassell Academy trains people who have been studying, hunting, and killing dragons for millennia. The boy from the dream appears, calling him brother and explaining to the protagonist that they are in the country of dragons. The Imperial Black Dragon was killed millennia ago, during the First Era. The protagonist wakes up with Professor Guderian saying he fainted during the explanation and gives him a dragon scale, saying it's a weapon. He explains that dragons are hard to kill because if their soul stays alive, they are reborn. They show him a dormant baby dragon. When the protagonist approaches, it briefly revives and then goes back to sleep. The protagonist tries to handle it well, but it's still complicated. Even so, he is accepted into Cassell. Guderian and Mingfei walk through the school and are surprised by a shooting, a war between two teams, one in red and one in black. Guderian is hit and dies, and the protagonist tries to help by looking for a doctor. The Reds are led by the student council president, Caesar, the blonde from the car, and the blacks by Tuzian. A massacre ensues, and both armies are on the ground, leaving Caesar and Tuzian to decide in a skillful sword fight that is too fast to follow. They enter buildings and run up the walls with their special swords, Dictator and Murasame. Trying to keep up, the protagonist is surprised by Nono, who is shot while trying to protect him, dying in front of him. The protagonist lets himself be carried away by the girl inside who calls him brother. Possessed by rage, he kills Nono's assassin, kills Caesar, and shoots Tuzian. A siren sounds, and a team of nurses injects something into them, and everyone gets up as if nothing had happened. A bald man shows up, saying this mock war is very expensive because they spend on tranquilizer and marker bullets. The protagonist is happy that Nono didn't die. The bald man calls the director to cancel, but he ends up allowing the games to take place on Freedom Day. He takes advantage of the call to talk to the protagonist, congratulating him for defeating the two strongest. In the office, the director and Professor Lars remember an ancient war they lost, which is why the mock war is allowed, so they can develop their genius to fight dragons. They also comment on an operation to prevent a bronze dragon from waking up. In the dormitory, Finger and the protagonist will share the room. They take the opportunity to explore the giant school. At that moment, the protagonist learns that spells need to be spoken in the dragon language. They arrive at the World Tree, which is half alive, half dead, where the body of the Imperial Black Dragon is kept imprisoned. Professor Guderian calls the protagonist for a test with a music box that imitates the sounds of the Imperial Black Dragon, which can use the most powerful spells, but the music box has no effect on him and gossip spreads throughout the school. Guderian and the bald man, whose name is Klein, search through old documents for the reasons why the protagonist didn't react, since he has the blood of dragons in his lineage. They remember that the Imperial Black Dragon and the Imperial White Dragon fought, and the black defeated the white. But if there is a possibility that the white soul is still alive, it makes Mingfei, the protagonist, a rare specimen who should be a research subject. But Guderian thinks it's better not to report this, and Klein agrees. The protagonist arrives late for the exam, and in it, Ricardo, written by Nono, accepts the nickname. The test seems blank, and yet they say they can't cheat, but Finger told him he needs to use spiritual vision to answer the questions. A frequency starts with strange noises, and even though the protagonist thinks his hidden answers were right, he sees the other competitors going into bizarre trances. Only he and a girl remain calm. Outside, Nono remembers her first spiritual vision with her late mother. Almost finishing the test, the protagonist sees the boy who used to call him brother, and finally, she introduces herself as Lu Mingfei, the same name as his cousin. She explains that depending on his emotions, they can meet in this spiritual world that he should control. Min says she feels sad for Mingfei because he doesn't know who he is. After a few random visions, he wakes up with Nono saying he fell asleep during the test but answered 9 questions when there should have only been 8. He is admitted to the school. Under the sea, Sheng and Aki are on their mission in a submerged city. Sheng summons several serpents that sweep the area. They are interrupted by an underwater earthquake and disappear into a whirlpool, leaving Professor Lars worried. With the power of the serpents, Sheng manages to report that they found the palace of the Bronze Dragon. Professor Lars informs the director and asks for permission to use the key, which we discover is a baby with pure dragon blood, cared for by Nono's adoptive mother. The Bronze Dragon is a second-generation direct descendant of the Imperial Black Dragon, which means he is very powerful. With the baby comfortably settled, Lars enters the water to stop him, finding Sheng and Aki, bringing new cables to return. With the help of the baby, they manage to open the portal seal. Sheng and Aki follow the information studied by Norma and find a tree with text in the dragon language. They touch a statue that awakens the palace, which realizes the intruders, forcing them to flee before the gates close. At the school, the protagonist has a crazy dream with Mins. During a conversation, he unlocks a skill that allows him to see the entire map of any situation he is in. Finger wakes him up, with an alarm sounding, and they need to leave the room. In the hallway, he finds Nono, who warns that they only need rank A students, making Finger sad and return to the room. The rank A students go to a room full of computers, and the protagonist sees the blonde girl who took the test with him. A professor wearing an exoskeleton explains that they need to help find the exit of the temple where Aki and Sheng are, and the answer needs to be quick. A large screen displays dragon writings to be deciphered in 20 minutes. Even Norma, the AI, can't do it alone and needs the students' help. Everyone starts working, including Caesar, Tkuzian, and the professors. Just as the protagonist begins to work, there is a city-wide blackout, which returns instantly, and the route is found. Even he is impressed. Below the sea, Sheng and Aki are updated. Now knowing the way, they can chart a route, but still on the run, Sheng gets hit. Aki saves her partner, and they reach an area where they can take off their helmets to save oxygen. On the ship, Professor Lars places the baby to unlock the exits, buying them time to escape, as long as they are very cautious. Aki tells Sheng that she prefers to stay and die together, as she couldn't bear to live without him. But before she could declare her love, Sheng kisses her, promising that they will get out of there. Professor Lars realizes that they might not make it out as recalculating shows the oxygen will run out first. Helicopters and boats search for Aki and Sheng. Just as they are about to give up, Aki appears, delivering what they found, and is sucked back into the sea in a whirlpool of blood, leaving Professor Lars blaming himself for their deaths. The sea creature doesn't give up, and the entire team arms themselves. They retaliate with gunfire, but it is so large and fast that it leaps up to explode a helicopter in one bite. The shooting continues, and the chase doesn't stop. Lars understands that the creature is not just a monster attacking, but is after what Aki delivered to them. The ship launches high-level bombs that are swallowed by the creature and explode, making them believe it has died. While they celebrate, the creature kills one of Lars's students, leaving him disoriented. The dragon's laughter echoes in everyone's minds, taunting them for another attack. As a last move, he lures the creature to a dam and destroys the object it so desires. With the help of the key, they trap the dragon in the dam and blow everything up. Not yielding, it launches its attack against Lars before leaving. In the computer room, the director appears on the screen saying that the operation was a success, causing everyone to celebrate and thanking the protagonist directly, prompting Tuzian to start clapping, joined by Caesar and all present. Returning to the room, Tuzian comes to thank the protagonist personally, inviting him to the Lionheart Society and warns that Caesar will likely invite him to join the student council. The morning bell rings again, informing that someone has died. Back on the ship, Professor Lars, pierced by one of the poison dragon's teeth, talks with the director, explaining that Aki and Shung took a brass vase, even without knowing what is inside. The director informs him that he discovered it to be the egg of Norton, the bronze and fire dragon. Lars then asks the director not to disclose the deaths, as he wants to die protecting the precious feelings of the dragon slayers. Another day begins, and the protagonist receives an email from Nono calling him Ricardo, inviting him to a student council gala. Finger explains who Caesar is, the son of a strong clan of dragon slayers, rich and powerful. He is so arrogant that he challenges anyone to a fight. Finger convinces the protagonist, and they both go dressed up for the party in a mansion, realizing how poor they are. There, they find Nono, in that same dress she wore when she saved Minf from being rejected by Wenwen. Caesar greets Nono on a carpet of rose petals and makes a speech since this party is her birthday. The musicians start a waltz, everyone dances, and Finger is so eager to dance that he pulls Minf. Caesar interrupts the dance with a fiery speech, forcing the chosen elite present to pledge loyalty to fight by his side, and calls the protagonist to his side, who still has doubts. That blonde girl from the test calls the protagonist to dance. Her name is Zero, but she asks to be called Rin. The dance triggers memories of something that never happened. As soon as it ends, she leaves, followed by Nono. The protagonist notices she is leaving her own party and goes to wish her a happy birthday, and she asks him to drive to a specific location. At that moment, the school's AI sets up defenses against a dragon, but in reality, it was just a group of 13 invaders. The council led by Caesar will defend one part of the school, Tuzian's Lionheart group will care for another important part, and the rest will be defended by the other students. While driving, Nono falls asleep and the protagonist hallucinates with his little brother, who tells him about her feelings for him and says that he also has feelings for her, which the protagonist denies, even knowing it is true. Finally, he unlocks another ability for the protagonist to find the right flower to give to Nono. At the school, their friends try to call Nono, but where she is, there is no signal. We see an invading agent talking on the phone with a woman who is not worried about the magic blockade. Almost all the invaders were mercenary agents from various places in the world with no connection to any organization. The professors decide to remove the spell blocker, which is protected by Klein's father, who accepts it as a birthday gift for his son. They arrive at the World Tree, which is half alive and half dead, where the body of the Black Dragon Emperor is kept imprisoned. Professor Guderian calls Proda to take a test with a music box that imitates the sounds of the Black Dragon Emperor, who is capable of using the most powerful spells, but the music box has no effect on him and gossip spreads throughout the school. Guderian and Baldi, whose name is Klein, search through old documents to find out why Proda did not react since he has dragon bloodlines. They remember that the Black Dragon Emperor and the White Dragon Emperor fought, the Black defeated the White, but if there is a possibility that the White's soul is alive, it makes Minf, Proda, a rare specimen that should be the subject of research, but Guderian thinks it is better not to report this and Klein agrees. Proda arrives late for the test and has Ricardo written on it, written by Nono, and he accepts the nickname. The test seems to be blank and they still say they can't cheat, but Finger told him he needs to use spiritual vision to answer the questions. A frequency starts with strange noises, and even though Proda thinks his hidden answers are correct, he sees the other competitors freaking out in bizarre trances. Only he and a girl remain calm. Outside, Nono remembers his first spiritual vision with his dead mother. Almost finishing the test, Proda sees the boy who called him brother, and finally she introduces herself as Lu Mingfei, the same name as his cousin. She explains that depending on his emotions, they can meet in this spiritual world that he should control. Min says she feels sad for Minf because he doesn't know who he is. A few more random visions out of nowhere and he wakes up with Nono saying that he slept during the test, but that he answered 9 answers when there should only be 8. Being admitted to the school. Beneath the sea, Sheng and Aki carry out their mission in a submerged city. Sheng summons several serpents that scan the place. They are interrupted by a sea earthquake and they disappear in a whirlpool, leaving Professor Lar. Constantine believes Minf is his brother and tries to touch him. The protagonist recognizes the place from his dreams. It's the palace of the Bronze Dragon. Minz appears, attacking Constantine and throwing him away, causing both to flee, which brings the protagonist back to reality. However, he doesn't find Finger and Lao, but instead the director. They go to the top of a tower and see that Constantine is resisting the students' attacks. To defeat him, the director gives the protagonist a bullet made from Philosopher's Stone, saying it's the only thing that can kill an Emperor Dragon, and it must be shot at its third eye, on its forehead. The director will use a time stop spell. Due to the protagonist being rank S, he will be the only one able to move. Lao and Finger fled when the child approached and managed to see Constantine transforming into a dragon. Everyone is surprised, stepping back as the director appears to face him directly, releasing his spell to slow down time just as the dragon breathes fire. With Min's support, the protagonist manages to hit the shot right when the spell's effect ends. The director orders everyone to shoot their tranquilizers. The dragon flies toward Lao, but instead of attacking him, it protects him, recognizing him as a brother. Lao runs away, bombarded with memories of a distant past, finally remembering. Indeed, Constantine was his younger brother, and he is actually Norton, releasing his true form. We see a conversation between the director and Klein's father about Lao being Norton and how he saw his brother being murdered. The director announces that he doesn't intend just to seal the dragons but to destroy them completely. Klein's father learned that Imperial dragons create urns to preserve their genes and memories. They can only be killed in their draconic forms, which is why they always resurrect. Therefore, they must be eliminated before they create these urns. The protagonist receives his credentials for the student council, and the director asks Caesar to form a team that includes Minf. Caesar calls a meeting with the protagonist and informs him that he will attend, but he immediately declines. Rin also goes on this mission and tries to convince him to go, but the protagonist remains resistant. Finally, Nono appears, giving him the choice. He informs her that he fears being considered a burden during the mission, but Caesar believes he will be extremely useful. In 2 months, the protagonist undergoes a series of intense training sessions with various students, focusing on physical and mental skills. Prepared, he still has doubts, but receives support from Finger, who will assist him from a distance. Elsewhere, Lao, now Norton, summons Samson, a sea dragon. The operation begins. Nono and the protagonist are assigned to dive, taking a vial of the baby key's blood to unlock the entrance to a submerged temple. Inside, with Norma's help, they realize that Norton, the Emperor Dragon, has returned home. The place resembles an abandoned temple, as if sacrifices were made for the dragons. Strange statues scare the protagonist. They release a reagent into the water that reveals a path for them to follow, but unbeknownst to them, the statues start to move. This is exactly where Aki and Xing died. They find the same tree and a large structure dedicated to the dragon god Norton, but Nono understands that this is not the right place, so they search for a submerged chamber. She was correct. They arrive at a cemetery, most of the bodies having participated in a war against the Emperor Dragon and died. Nono uses the protagonist's blood in a device and manages to open a portal to another location, disconnecting them from the ship. They arrive at what seems to be Norton's lair, but there's no one there. They investigate, and Nono manages to recreate the conversation between Constantine and Norton, discovering how the two brothers lived together and were close, profiling Norton. They successfully set the bomb and realize that Norton is there, fleeing back through the portal, returning to the cemetery, which is now empty. The palace comes to life and starts to disintegrate to prevent their escape. They return through the portal and seek a new exit. Caesar tries to convince Professor Klein to dive in to help, but he refuses. Nono and the protagonist find themselves in an underwater maze, without access to Norma. He uses his mapping ability and connects with Finger, using Professor Klein's brain as a relay. As Finger is rank F, he doesn't have access to much, so the professor gives him his password, allowing access to Eva. Thus, they navigate their way out. Inexplicably, the water starts to heat up, and Rin says it's the dragon. With the professor under stress, Caesar temporarily takes command of the ship just in time, as the dragon begins to attack, strategically positioned far from the sonar. The ship tries to escape the creature, and Rin sees Norton in a distant ravine. Norton descends and walks over the waters toward them, merging with Samson. The mysterious woman orders Mia to kill Norton and leave Lu Mingfei alive. She readies a long-range rifle with a philosopher's stone bullet. Submerged, Nono and Proda are guided by Finger to descend further. They find the cadaveric body of Sheng, along with a special tablet bearing draconic symbols. The two continue descending, with Finger informing them they have little time. Under stress, Proda experiences a hallucination. Minz argues with her brother, saying he trusts his life to others and is always the victim. He should use his own powers to rid himself of problems. Returning to reality, the two descend to a passage. Proda tries to use his own blood to open it, but the wound is already closed, and a large concrete block falls on them, crushing them. Nono manages to hold it up, but she removes her helmet to bleed. She succeeds and passes out, being carried by Nono. Caesar leads a dive to rescue them while being pursued by Norton. Proda has memories of Wenwen, the competitors, and Sheng, but awakens with Nono calling him while still underwater. They need to ascend with little oxygen, and with Proda's suit damaged, he may struggle with the pressure. Tuzian appears by helicopter to provide support, promising to kill the Imperial Dragon. Nono gives her suit to Proda so he can swim to the surface, as she is an excellent freestyle swimmer. The path they take explodes with poisonous gas, which could be dangerous for Nono, who isn't in a suit. The ship hovers over the area where they will emerge and prepares the torpedoes to attack Norton. However, the dragon is agile and can dodge in any direction, so they must attack it up close, a highly dangerous strategy. Rin warns that during the torpedo launch, Caesar should not use his ability to enhance his senses, as that would certainly cause his eardrums to burst. Caesar uses his ability to enhance his senses and shoots the dragon with the philosopher's stone bullet, even knowing he wouldn't be able to defeat it. He uses this to irritate it. Once they are positioned strategically, Caesar unleashes the power of his ability, revealing Tuzian in the helicopter, who attacks Norton with fire magic. The dragon retaliates with the same spell, and Rin manually releases a torpedo that hits Norton squarely, throwing him far away and making him sink. As Rin had warned, Caesar is left almost deaf. The two share a secret that they know sign language. He learned it to communicate with his mother, and she learned it because she was lonely and had difficulty speaking. They seal a partnership between them. Nono and Proda find the bell. She breathes through the oxygen tank's auxiliary, and they head for the emergency module. As soon as Proda enters, Nono is attacked by Norton. Proda believes she is dead and is flooded with memories of her. Proda has a hallucination with Minz. He tries to return to reality quickly to save Nono, but Minz asks why Proda wants to be a dragon slayer. Minz explains that Proda has never been respected for such cowardly behavior and that if he continues like this, he will never be taken seriously. Proda says his only reason for becoming a dragon slayer is to make his parents proud of him. He questions whether he is a person to be proud of, since he always asks for help and even cheated on the test. Proda feels abandoned and useless. No one had ever cared for him until Nono arrived. He feels he needs to save her. Min's offers her help, but with a condition. In desperate moments, she will lend him her power to the extent that he can kill the Imperial Dragon, even if with difficulty. And Prota's life will be hers. Prota seals the deal, and Min's warns that it was a trap. For over 1,000 years, he had never said yes, but this time it was for Nono. Min's unlocks several spells, including one that enhances Caesar's senses. With the deal sealed, he returns to reality, now with new spells allowing him to breathe underwater. He rips Nono from the dragon's clutches, regenerating her wounds and resurrecting her. Carefully, he sends her back to the ship and confronts the dragon. Now able to access Min's whenever he wants, they discuss that no offensive spells have been unlocked, but the tablet he carries grants access to alchemical weapons related to the 7 deadly sins, created by Norton to punish the other dragons. As the battle begins, Prota uses a spell that chains Norton, preventing him from summoning the weapon of wrath. Taking advantage of Norton being possessed by rage, he summons lust, pride, and gluttony. Even submerged, the fight is fast. The pressure of the water hinders them, but Min's releases a skill that allows Prota to move faster without being impeded by the pressure. He delivers a series of blows to Samson's body, cutting his tongue, piercing an eye, and nearly getting devoured, but he reacts with a strike. The last blow was so powerful that even from the ship, which hovers over the area, Prota delivers a series of strikes with the 3 weapons. Even with the advantage, Prota knows he needs to end the battle. As dragons do not tire, Norton is waiting for the right moment to retaliate. Once again, Prota questions his usefulness and feels alone in the universe. Min's warns him that if he gives up on life, she can kill him and take over his body. She informs him that to finish the fight, he needs to hit Norton, the human part, not Samson, the draconic part. Prota uses Caesar's spell to enhance his senses and finds Norton, attacking him directly. Face to face, Prota realizes that Norton is actually his friend Lau. Norton takes advantage of this moment of weakness and chokes him, but Prota, with difficulty, takes the sword of lust and pierces him from behind. At that moment, Prota recalls his times with Lau, the online games, the video calls, the times he called him, encouraging him to stay strong. Norton sinks, being swallowed by darkness, while Prota rises to the surface. Nono recovers, being treated by a doctor. In a rush, Caesar shows how worried he was for his fiancée. Prota floats adrift, mourning Lau, and is saved by Rin. From a distance, Mia sees that Norton has not been killed, except for the Sword of Wrath. Therefore, she uses a special bullet in her weapon and shoots the dragon, killing him for good. With the mission completed, the director talks to Prota, congratulating him on his good performance, but he still needs to write an essay to complete his grades. Prota asks why dragons take on human forms, and the director replies that it is to walk among us without drawing attention. Lau was always a dragon but had lost his memory after his last death and was reborn as Lau, living in an orphanage. Contacting Constantine revived his memories. That is why the school keeps the dragons a secret, to avoid causing chaos in modern society. Finally, the director hands Prota a letter. It is from his mother, who congratulates him on his grades and the mission, saying she wishes she could be with him but cannot be there. She is sure that when he graduates, his parents will be there and that she loves him forever. Prota cries upon realizing that his mother is proud of him. In the dormitory, Prota is upset about what Finger wrote about him on the school blog. While discussing, they discover that Caesar and Tuzian have moved to a dormitory next door. Nono goes to visit him and thank him, as she feels something happened and that Prota somehow saved her. They reaffirm their promise to protect each other. Prota receives a cell phone, just like at the beginning. This time, it is a gift from Min's, and their communication will be done via text message. The director checks the answers to Mingfei's test and notices a drawing of Min's, recognizing it, but he burns the test. Prota runs happily through the school, stopping in front of the tree with 2 halves.